Hi there, I'm Samantha with Culpeper County Parks and Recreation, and today we have another season of Crafty creations and some really cool art projects and things to do, all ages from little on up. And today we're actually going to do something with apple carving, and we are going to craft, or I will show you how to make shrunken apple faces. So this is just one of several examples that I will review with you. But these are really cool because they're simple. You just need, basically, you need your apples, something to peel and carve with, peeler, and I like to use, these are pumpkin carving tools and they work just fine, but you could use a paring knife, you could use a toothpick, you could use clay sculpting tools, whatever feels comfortable. And for younger children, they can even use toothpicks or a wooden dowel, something that has a sharp edge. It will do just fine. Granny Smith apples, I think, are really nice because they're firmer and work really well. You can experiment. I would recommend starting with a few apples so that you can kind of get the hang of things. You can experiment with removing all of the peel, some of the peel, just carving into the peel itself. But if you do, the more flesh you have exposed, the more character you will have when you dry them. And to finish reviewing our supplies, you'll need, of course, the tools, the apple, you'll need lemon or lemon juice, water, and salt. That's it. So let's get started. As I said before, you're going to take and start carving. Let me just prep my station here. First things first, let's just start carving the apple so that you can have the face or the flesh exposed. And kids, if you need mom and dad to do this, brother, sister, whatever works, go right ahead. I really think this is a nice thing to do fall time of the year for Halloween especially, because you can use these if you do them far enough in advance, meaning if you air dry them, which could take up to 2 weeks, you can do those in advance and use them as decorations. You can hang them, you can put them in vases, you can use them for your displays, for your parties, or you can even use them if you make them a day or so in advance and use your oven to cure them. You can put them in a bowl of punch and make, you know, something that is kind of a neat little enhancement. So really, once you're satisfied with your peeling, and I like to leave a little bit of the ring. You can even remove the stem, but advantage is if you leave the stem, you have something to hang it from. So there you have that. Next thing you need to do once you have your apple peeled is, and get your tools ready, you need some lemon juice and some salt. Now, different ways you can do it. I like to use water and add the lemon juice and the salt to the water and then soak the apple for a bit. Some people will carve, or I should say peel, carve, and then dip into just the lemon juice as well as rubbing in the salt, and then dry it with a paper towel before you cure it. But as I said, water, I think, and soaking it even up to 30 minutes prior to carving can work. In terms of measurements, anywhere between, this is not quite a gallon, but enough if you have several apples. You can put up to a half cup of lemon juice, and again, fresh squeezed, or the concentrate is fine, a lot easier, as well as a half cup of the salt. No big deal. I'm so accustomed to these quantities that I can just kind of estimate. And I just happen to have pickling salt available, so that's what I'm using. This is not a necessity. Just use whatever salt you'd like. Okay, give it a stir. Soak your apple or apples. Okay. And then, nifty trick. This guy here, I did, after soaking, also made a solution of green food coloring and soaked it for a bit. And that is just trial and error. I did actually put the coloring directly onto the apple before I peeled. You can do it any way you like and experiment, but just something that's interesting and neat to do. And then we're just going to suppose this has been soaked. A little bit of undissolved salt in there. Now, one thing I do not have handy, paper towels, but something to dry with. Just dry your apple. Now you're ready to carve. And carving can be something very intricate for those that whittle, potentially. Could be very good at carving an image of a face that's very realistic. But I think for our purposes today, we're just doing something that is basic and simple, meaning 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. So I am going to use this one, and as I said, this is a very old pumpkin carving knife tool. It has that serrated, inverted serrated edge. It's very thin. It goes into the apple very, very well. So I am going to start here. You could take a pencil or even a toothpick and you could outline. I like to do things kind of freehand, so I'm going to take my time and just look at the apple and figure, okay, the orientation, I think this is, being that it's not perfectly round, I'm going to make my eyes, nose, and mouth. You can start, here's a trick, by making a nose, which is basically to come down like this. If anyone remembers Ziggy, the old cartoon back from, well, I remember it from the 80s, but I think of that nose, just kind of comes down like this. And I'm only going to outline just so I can be sure that this is how I want things. Now, so we really want to get, don't need to be delicate, just push that down on that chopping block, cutting board, table, whatever flat, sturdy surface. And carve out your eye. You want to do something that is very exaggerated because obviously when it shrivels or shrinks, it's going to bring everything in, and that's kind of part of the joy of the process, is because you really don't know how things are going to turn out. So this is why you should do multiples, and it's a great family project because everyone gets to do their apples and you can see how they differ, and everyone comes up with different ideas in terms of what their faces look like. Apple dolls are another thing that I did not mention, but I can remember those as a child. You'd see them in antique stores and things like that, where they have the cotton hair and the eyes, maybe a little blush, and then you can make a frame dress. shoes, hat, that sort of thing. Or maybe even a witch for Halloween, and find make yourself a broom witch's hat. So far we have, as I said, 2 eyes. Here's our nose, which not quite done with that. I'm going to do a mouth before. I'm trying to expose as much of what I'm doing here, but nothing really that I'm doing in particular. You do want to take your time. It's important that you don't rush things, because if you do, you may cut too much and then the flesh will just pop out in chunks, and then you lose whatever sort of shape that you're going for. So I'm going to keep cutting into this mouth until I'm reasonably happy with that. You can, let's see, do I have in here? Toothpick. You can add, maybe lines to see how those will show up in the drying process as wrinkles. So right here, I'm just going to take out a chunk, almost like a triangular piece here. But I'm going to be very gentle not to cut this part of the nose, because I want to expose the space around the nose so that the nose stands out. I'm not a carver or a sculptor, but I do know that there are different methods of carving, etching, all of these things and how they differ. When you think of jack-o'-lanterns, you have where you just have the clean openings for eyes and nose and mouth, or you have something you etch on the surface of the pumpkin and you carve out around to expose the raised portion, which is the design. You could do the same thing with the apple and experiment. But I think I'm fairly happy with this. Whoops. And you can just kind of play with things. You could even cut out ears, and you could even shape the face if you wanted, meaning if you had a knife, you could just kind of cut it square-like. Let's say you wanted to make like a Frankenstein sort of rectangular shaped head. You could do that, but that's essentially it. So at this point, you can put it back into your acid, water, salt solution, or you could just take more lemon juice, rub some salt. That will just keep it from, hopefully, turning brown. The next phase is very simple. What you're going to do is, and this is what I recommend, if you are comfortable with leaving an oven on for a long period of time, you can set it for between 190 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 6 hours to start the process. Just put it in the oven. What I had done with these guys, if you have some wire and some wire cutters, can put in here like this. Basically, I took this, just poked it through, and instead of placing the apple onto the grate in your oven, the shelving, take it and put this over your wire shelf. Close it back like so. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to basically hang in your oven. And depending on how large the oven is, you have room to put several. And like I said, for up to 6 hours, I would say a minimum 200 degrees, and you're going to see get a really nice initial cure. And These here, I think this one is my favorite. But as you can see here, eyes, nose, mouth, the mouth kind of folded in at the bottom there. And you can see too, I had some that were on the grate and some that were hanging. This is the advantage of hanging them. You won't actually see the indentation there from if it were, you know, sitting, because as it shrinks, the flesh can become, you know, kind of malleable and not really burn, but sink into that groove. But that is essentially it. Ideally, you want, like I said, that 6 hours. You kind of need to experiment. I would say if you're going to air cure them, 2 weeks. Put them in a dry, non-humid place, not a bathroom, not really a kitchen, not really outdoors either. It just depends on where you think it could be bug-free and you would be good to not have or encourage mold. But if you do, the mold will clean off, or you can just kind of cut it off. There's nothing to say that you have to protect what you've carved initially. You can keep molding this into whatever you would like for it to be. But 6 hours, 200 degrees, see where you are, and then maybe repeat that process the next day. Do it overnight, do it during the day, whatever makes you comfortable, but I do think that the oven cure method is really the best. It's fast, it's effective, and yeah, it works really well. The last thing I want to do is to suggest what you can do. You know, as I was saying, you can take these and you can actually decorate the heads themselves with various things like eyeballs, you know, googly wiggly eyes. These are actually candy eyes that I have here. I don't know if you can see, but we have 2 eyes there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to put in, just so you can see what having some eyes would look like. Get some tacky glue and delicately remove your wire. So you have this. And let's experiment by putting some glue, whether it's in the actual opening, which I guess I will do. And this is nice because this dries clear. And if you have tweezers, that works really well. You can pick up the tweezer and plop the eye in there. But here we are. Oops. Now, toothpick comes in handy because you can kind of move it where you need it to be. Like so. So we have some eyes. These are rather tiny. If you had larger Google eyes, they would probably be much easier to install. But you can do that as well as, this is just some wool roving here. Cotton, you know, whatever you might have, you can make some hair. I'm actually just going to make use of the stem, although I suppose you could take it off so that you don't exactly have it showing. And this too, you could glue. You could put as much or as little as you would like. And lastly, where do I have, let's see. wooden dowels, sticks, even bamboo skewers I think might work, but you want to have an edge there, and you can very gently manipulate this into the base of the apple just to secure it. And then you can just finally, you can kind of play with the hair. I won't spend too much time manipulating, but you can find a vase and you can have a collection of these. You can embellish with, you know, something you take out of the yard, ribbon, maybe some colorful tissue paper, put that into your vase, and much like you would arrange a bouquet of roses or flowers, you could do the same here. Or like I said, you could hang them with the wire. But, you know, again, here's some really simple ideas. You can use other things. You know, this is kind of reminiscent of a shrunken head, you know, from Amazonian peoples that would take and boil and shrink down after removing the skull and then sewing various openings shut. So that's kind of reminiscent of that. Those are toothpicks. But anyway, anything that's creepy, unique, something you could do and think of this Halloween. So let us know how this turns out and what your thoughts are. As always, we really would enjoy your feedback. And that's all we have for today for our shrunken apple heads. Thank you to Culpeper Media Network, and please find us on Facebook, Culpeper County Parks and Recreation. Look for our information on this tutorial, so you can call us, you can email us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Bye.